Plaza Park of the heart of the city. Standards for its use should encourage variety, equity in usage and regulations, and respect for the important role the plaza and the Plaza Park play in the life of Santa Fe. One could also say the aesthetics of these standards should encourage the celebration of the historic and aesthetics incident to the oldest capital in the United States. Citizens, however, are complaining it's too loud in the plaza. It's loud and I can't hear the person I'm talking right next to. Too loud and I can't hear what my customer is ordering. So let me provide a hopefully humorous analogy. What if Councilor Maestas and I are engaged in commerce? And what if Councilor Demas, who I understand sings in a rock and roll band, starts singing extras loudly, rock around the clock, or whatever classics.
I don't know that song.
You don't know that song. What if Councilor Demas sings that song for 2 straight hours? What if Councilor Demas's First Amendment rights intersect with others' abilities to peaceably conduct commerce? And how do you, as policymakers, write or rewrite an ordinance to deal with this intersection? And to build the record and frame the issue, I'm going to speak about 5 minutes about the legal and constitutional issues. The U.S. Supreme Court has stated, quote, "Our cases make clear that even in a public forum, the government may impose reasonable restrictions on the time, place, or manner of protected speech, provided the restrictions are justified without reference to the content of the regulated speech, they are narrowly tailored to serve a significant government interest, and that they leave open ample alternative channels for communication of information." So let's go through that analysis. Number one, content neutral. A content-based restriction on performance is valid only if it's fit within a category of speech that the First Amendment does not protect, like obscenity. We do something about that. But it means you cannot amend the busker ordinance to pick and choose between preferred content, such as Councilor Demas's band or my band, which might be an attorney rap group. Number two, narrowly tailored to serve a significant government interest. Government has a substantial interest in protecting its citizens from unwelcome noise. This interest is perhaps at its greatest when the government seeks to protect the well-being, tranquility, and the privacy of the home. But it is by no means limited to that context, for the government may act to protect even such traditional public forums as city streets and parks from excessive noise. That's from the Ward versus Rock against racism case. So the requirements of narrowly tailoring means so long as the means chosen are not substantially broader than necessary to achieve the government's interest. This means is that you can amend the busker ordinance regarding the time of performance, the place of performance, and the manner of performance if you enter a finding tonight that the change serves a significant government interest, and if the change is narrowly tailored or specifically focused on the issue. And number three, the alternative channels of communication. In Madison, Wisconsin, a court ruled that a daily fixed amplification time period was permissible because speakers wishing to use amplification devices could speak between 12 and 1:30 or 5 to 7. And so under the Stokes versus City of Madison case, there were alternative channels for communication, and that was permissible. I anticipate during the public hearing that's coming up, some parties will ask you to table everything tonight. This will leave the status quo. So what are the current laws? A street performer currently cannot perform within 150 feet of another street performer. A street performer cannot be louder than 60 decibels as measured for a period of 10 minutes, at least 1 foot inside the property line of the affected property. A person using amplification devices cannot be heard from more than 25 feet. A street performer must move every 2 hours, and the city's busker license controls or supersedes other entities' busker license. So again, that's the status quo today. If this bill is tabled or fails, those laws remain on the books. But what if you tonight want to try to write a change? My legal advice to you is the City Council may amend the busker ordinance regarding time, place, and manner while honoring the street performer's First Amendment rights. So where should you start in your language? First, there's Councilor Calvert's bill. There's also the facilitator's report, which is in your packet, which summarized the 3-hour public community meeting and was set up to take the dispute over process off the table. And there was your previous public hearing on this issue. There's been approximately 30 ideas offered to address how time, place, and manner requirements can be applied. My advice to you is to focus on 4 to 6 ideas tonight, based on Councilor Calvert's bill and from the ideas presented during the public meetings, that might be the most effective and narrowly tailored to deal with the issues. And in fact, that's what tonight's substitute bill does. It has 4 to 6 ideas. And it has a clause requiring staff to report back to you on all other issues before October 30th, 2014. So let me introduce the 4 to 6 ideas in the substitute bill. First, the bill starts by amending section 23-8.4. In legislative speak, that means the current sections up to section 8.4 are left untouched. Those sections, as written now, remain as is. I know Councilor Calvert wanted to change some wording in the findings section, but those ideas will have to wait until the October 30th report. So the first idea tries to make it more clear what a licensed performer is doing. The government has a significant interest in protecting the safety and the public and provide due care for the safety of the public. So, for example, a previous council has stated that no person can operate a unicycle or have a fire on the Plaza Park. A new requirement on the busker license with just a single line stating the type of performance is narrowly tailored to ensure that the busker and the finance department do not approve a license for an already prohibited activity. And the categories can be broad: music, dance, juggling. It has been represented to me that recently a busker was on a unicycle on the plaza. If there had been this one-line requirement, that would have been caught in the front end. The second idea eliminates the $10 30-day license. This means there'll be one uniform fee of $35 for a calendar year. This idea appeared to have unanimous support from the stakeholders at the public meeting, so it might be one of the few items that everyone's agreed upon. We'll find out tonight. The third idea is to require buskers to have their license displayed in a city-produced photo ID. Right now, the requirement is to have the license and identification available. The government has a substantial interest in making sure licenses are not fraudulently used and shared among non-licensees. There have been stories of buskers sharing or passing a license between performers. However, it is possible that some of the speakers tonight will argue about legal concerns of photo ID requirements. They may raise the argument that allegations, absent specific proof of fraud, does not represent the significant government interest, and requiring one group on the plaza, as opposed to others, to have photo ID is not a narrowly tailored tool. Perhaps you will feel that the current requirements that the buskers have available, their own photo ID, suffices to meet the government interest. The fourth idea jumps to section 23.8.5, which creates a 50-foot zone around Plaza Park artisan and art vendors and pushcart vendors from the street performers. Going back to our example, this would require Councilor Demas to perform his excellent singing 50 feet away from Councilor Maestas. And as the plaza is laid out, about every 25 feet is a bench. So this would mean that Councilor Demas could sit on the second bench away from Councilor Maestas. The government has a significant interest in providing a peaceful opportunity for commerce to occur on the historic plaza. As the previous councilor found, the standards for plaza's use should encourage equity in usage and regulations. There is also a significant government interest since the city licensed juries, and the city manager then instructs these vendors exactly where they can work on the plaza. Since these vendors are in fixed locations, it would be easy to draw a map of where the 50 feet falls and include it in the busker application packet. However, again, it is possible that speakers tonight will argue that 2 benches away limits the other places where they can perform on the plaza. Perhaps they will argue to you that 25 feet or one bench away is a more narrowly tailored solution. The fourth idea came from the plaza vendors, so I'll be interested to hear if they feel the 25 or 50-foot solution are equally preferable. It's also possible that the downtown merchants will similarly advocate for some type of zone. Now, they do have a difference is that they can step into their store. They may raise the issue about buskers blocking their display windows as a problem. My advice to you is the issue of blocking display windows and where street performers can stand on streets is challenging. Where is the boundary between private and public streets? What if one merchant likes a musician and his immediate neighbor does not? What if by limiting people on the streets, they're all forced to the Plaza Park? My advice to you is that these issues need more study. This idea also incorporates a requirement that street performers themselves should stay 50 feet apart from each other. The government has a significant interest in providing a peaceful opportunity for street performers to perform on the historic plaza and for the combined sound of all the performers not to be disruptive to the community. As stated above, standards for the plaza use should encourage variety, equity in usage, and regulations. The current status quo is 150 feet, and as documented in the facilitator's report, this means that only one or two buskers should be on the plaza right now. It is possible that speakers tonight will argue that 2 benches away between street performers limits the places where they can perform. Perhaps they feel 25 feet is a more narrowly tailored solution. I will be interested to hear from the representative of the Buskers Alliance, because this is an issue about how close they want to be with each other. Perhaps they're ready to offer other solutions that they think are narrowly tailored. Perhaps they think that a distance requirement is not prudent, but a cap of 3 musicians and 2 non-musicians on the plaza and the portals at one time, and let the performers and the dancers and the balloon makers figure out on a day-to-day basis where they should stand in relation to each other. I'll be interested to hear what their solutions are. The 5th idea states that street performers should not be plainly audible 50 feet away from the performance site. Please note the word plainly audible is language from the current noise ordinance, and it is used in current city code regarding noise ordinance about radio and music between neighbors. Plainly audible is already in code. The government has a significant interest in providing a peaceful opportunity for commerce to occur on the historic plaza. The 50-foot measurement is narrowly tailored as is consistent with the 50-foot requirements as mentioned above. However, again, it's possible that speakers tonight will argue that the 50-foot or the 2 benches away is too close. Perhaps you will feel a different distance is more of a narrowly tailored solution. Perhaps the speakers will argue that plainly audible is maybe too subjective to the listener, and maybe they'll advocate for a numeric figure like 60 decibels. If so, those speakers should be prepared to explain where the measurement should be taken, perhaps 20 feet away, 25 feet away, and how long to make it an effective tool. The 5th idea also includes a fixed time each day when amplification can be used. The government has a significant interest in providing a peaceful opportunity for commerce to occur on the historic plaza. Amplification also impacts the merchants around the plaza. Without amplification, they can't hear their customers within their stores. They can't conduct meetings with their clients. But the fixed time is narrowly tailored because it still allows amplification on a daily fixed basis. During a portion of the lunch hour and afternoon where there's likely larger crowds of people, and it's during the standard 2-hour period that's currently in the code. It is also similar to the narrowly tailored solution that survived legal challenge in Madison, Wisconsin. The 6th idea is that buskers will have to stay off the bandstand and really move when their 2 hours is complete. If on the plaza, they have to move off the plaza. If somewhere else, they have to move 100 feet. The government has a significant interest in providing an opportunity for a multiple of buskers to perform, and a peaceable opportunity for commerce to occur on the plaza. This is narrowly tailored because moving needs some level of quantification. For example, Councilor Demas can't just jump into Councilor Boucher's seat right now and claim that he has moved and play for another 2 hours next to Councilor Maestas. There needs to be some numeric quantification to make it effective. The final idea in section 8.7 was meant as a cleanup measure. My overall advice to you is not to touch section 8.7, the enforcement section, for two reasons tonight. First, there has been much debate about the so-called criminalization or recriminalization. And if you leave section 8.7 alone, you can say, we're not changing anything about that tonight. We're not changing anything about that tonight. And let's study during the next 6 months in advance of the October presentation. The police, the finance department staff, and the city attorney's office is ready to start a pilot project to track data. How many people actually get warnings? Is it the same 3 people every day? How many people get criminal citations? How are those handled and adjudicated? In comparison, how many people get citations for skateboarding on the plaza? Do they pay fines? This will provide a 6-month window of a learning experience, an assessment of how the parties act and their involvement, and really the success of the community and policing and the People to Plaza initiative. At the end of the 6 months, we can have hard data, we can sit down with the stakeholders, and figure out what the best practices are for enforcement. But of course, in conclusion, I couldn't help myself. And I suggested to the co-sponsors to delete a portion regarding written warnings in section 8.7A and 1 and 2, because the police on the plaza do not have a written warning system. However, the ACLU has contacted the city attorney's office and interpreted this housekeeping deletion as a change to delete an officer's opportunity to provide a warning. That was not my intent. So my advice to you is to restore the change to section 8.7. And let's handle all the enforcement issues after the pilot project is complete and can be reported to you at the October 30th date. Now, while we're preparing for this, the police have a good compromise suggestion. Again, the issue is there's no written warning. Again, the issue is that for skateboarders, there's just a warning. So my advice to you actually in 8.7 is to restore all the deletions except for the word written. That means it would read, upon first violation of the provision of this section, the police may issue a warning to the person violating the section. I believe this would address the ACL's concern about progressive discipline and enforcement. And just by striking the word written, will resolve the police's concern and also make it consistent with the existing ordinance about skateboarders. In overall conclusion, my advice to you is the City Council may amend the bus ordinance regarding time, place, and manner while honoring Street Performers' First Amendment speech rights. I stand for any questions.
Okay, before we ask questions, I wanted to just ask the councilors who took the time, which I do appreciate, Councilor Maestas, Fidel, and Trujillo, who spent time on this on behalf of the council. Our goal was, last month, was to drive to a decision tonight and to put in the time and effort to make sure that there was ample public participation. I believe we had a facilitator to participate in that. Briefly, before we go on, and one of you three maybe can offer the council a perspective on the process if the mandate that the council directed during the past 30 days was met, and if you feel like we're prepared to go ahead and consider the ordinance amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take a shot at that, and I'm not going to be very lengthy. I'm not going to restate what Zach Shammer said, and I think, first of all, we're here, it's April 30th, and you asked us to make this time specific and ensure that we took necessary steps to ensure that the process is not the issue. And I know that there was many that came before us when we last considered this that complained that they were not a part of the process. So we decided to have a targeted public meeting. Councilors Mendel and Trujillo and I attended. We sat right there in the middle of the floor. We sat there for 3 hours and listened to all sides of the issue. It was, as you said, a facilitated public meeting. And what I can say in summary, Mr. Mayor, members of the governing body, and interested members of the audience, is I think these amendments represent compromise. And, for example, on the language that was proposed regarding adding additional provisions in the criminal section, we completely, backed off, making those potential penalties more harsh. Another thing is, we believe that these changes are measured, knowing that we are going to come back on October 30th to evaluate this, and so we thought that was the best approach. And I consider this to be consensus. Consensus among, my impression was the buskers, the vendors, and law enforcement. I think that was another issue that was predominant among everyone involved, that the existing ordinance was difficult to enforce. So I feel like some of these changes are going to really aid in improving the enforceability of this ordinance. So we address the process. These changes are measured. They represent a compromise. We definitely enhanced the enforcement, but we have to keep in mind that the plaza is for a lot of folks, not just the vendors and the buskers, but we have a lot of tourists and residents of Santa Fe, the merchants, their customers, and so as decision makers, we need to consider everyone when it comes to the plaza. And so we have a very broad constituency, and I ask that you consider that broad constituency in addition to the constituency that's here tonight. So, again, I believe this was a very good process, and I'll reiterate what I said when I decided to take this on along with Councilors Trujillo and Rendell, is that Councilor Calvert did a lot of work, and it was not fair to him and all of you that were involved in his effort. So I think it preserves a lot of the work that was done by Councilor Calvert. It addressed a lot of the immediate concerns that we heard the last time we met to discuss this issue, and I believe we have consensus among the primary stakeholders.
Thank you, Councilor. Any additional comments from the two councilors? Thank you. Okay. So, any decisions made just on behalf?
Mr. Mayor, may I really briefly on that? There's been.
We're gonna register you for the deal, and then you can talk to them.
Thank you. My name is Ben Bauer, B-A-U-R. The members of the Alliance and some of the other buskers have spoken about this. What I would ask you to do is perhaps a compromise from what you propose. There is a representative, Ms. Talia Kosh, who can address some legal issues, but I think the buskers are really more in a position of responding to the city as opposed to on a par with the vendors or any other group, because this affects their time on the plaza and their rights. So we would ask if Ms. Kosh could address you for 10 or 12 minutes. Many of the buskers have agreed to not address the council in recognition that that's taking up time. Because of Mr. Chandler's comments about the criminal enforcement, which is the only thing I was going to address, I can keep mine to 1 minute. But there are some other members here that really do need to, I think, address and have not been part of the process. So, if
how many individuals minus? What was the lady's name again?
Talia Kosh.
Ms. Talia, how many members besides Talia would like to address the council?
Besides buskers?
Just
buskers.
No, this is just on the buskers, for the buskers.
Besides Talia.
Besides Talia? Okay.
And she feels like she can do hers in about 10 minutes.
How about 7?
You got it.
Okay, come on in. And then if we can ask the individuals who would like to address her to please line up and prepare your comments for the 1 minute that you'd be allowed. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and councilors. Good evening. Thank you for all your time and patience with all of this. I'm Talia Kosh. I'm just a quick introduction about who I am and why you've never seen me before in any of these interactions with regard to the issue of street performance. The Santa Fe, I represent the Santa Fe Buskers Alliance tonight. And they actually, they called me and asked me to be a part of these conversations. And while I come as an advocate of this issue, I also come as a friend of the council. And from the Buskers Alliance, a sincere gratitude and thank you to all of you for all of your patience and time put into this. They definitely wanted me to say that to all of you. I grew up in Santa Fe, I practice law here, and I'm founder and co-president of New Mexico Lawyers for the Arts, which is a pro bono organization. We assist artists of many different mediums on a pro bono basis, and I'm also an educator. I've dedicated my life in very large part to helping artists navigate the laws that control their work. My interest is in bridging worlds and finding where things connect and meet, because the collaborative and connective economy is upon us. So, sometimes laying out the big picture and comparative models is the most effective way to lend perspective, and the documents that will be submitted to you, and that's kind of the intent behind those. So, I'd like to just kind of reiterate some of and I appreciate Mr. Chandler's very thorough presentation. It was very useful. And I'd just like to reiterate a few of the definitions and purpose of the section at issue. So the purpose that still exists and hasn't been changed is to ensure the ability of street performers to perform in public spaces and to promote harmony among street performers, local businesses, residents, and visitors to Santa Fe. So the definition section, well, I'd like to say many of the proposed changes that are on the table right now do not, in our opinion, do that. They do not ensure the ability of street performers to perform in public spaces. And as Councilor Maestas asserted, that all of us, this proposed legislation was a compromise among all parties. And I will state very frankly, we had a recent meeting last week, I believe it was, with Mr. Chandler and the Buskers Alliance. And we came out of that meeting feeling very positive, and he listened, he was patient, and we felt very positive leaving that meeting. But then the proposed legislation that came out of that was very surprising to us on several points. There's new issues, there's new legislation here that has never been discussed. I wasn't at that 3-hour mediation and community meeting, but even if I was, these issues wouldn't have been discussed there. So I feel compelled to talk about those as briefly as possible here. I'd just like to reiterate that in the definition section, street performer includes reciting or singing, acting, dancing, miming, playing a musical instrument, performing a theatrical or literary work. Street performer means an individual who performs. So a performer is really another word for an artist. So that's how I'm going to refer to them here as street artists. And really, we speak a lot about creative economy here, which is built on artists that are not only confined to a gallery or concert hall. Many live and breathe these performances on the street. So it's a very slippery slope when you start to define what art shall be regulated and what art shall not be regulated. Under this definition, these sort of archaic delineations are concerning. Increasingly younger artists are operating and working in multiple mediums, not only in visual arts, but in performance art, incorporating music, multimedia experiences, technology. The breaking down of these barriers or silos of creative mediums means that street artist restrictions, as written, affect every artist. For when you regulate artistic speech by requiring that these artists be licensed for a particular type of speech, as the new proposed legislation does, this legislation demands that certain artists specify or write down what type of performance they are getting a license for. This is a content restriction, as Mr. Chandler discussed. The strictest of scrutiny applies when this is an issue. What if a street artist lists, these are our concerns, what if a street artist lists that they are getting a license for music, but they actually have performance or visual elements in their work? What if the work they do is difficult to define? Does that mean public safety is going to make determinations about what's on their license, about whether or not their performance falls into what is specified on their license? I understand the purpose of why this is in here, but it's not specified in the legislation, and so we can only look at that in terms of the effect. When you limit the licensing scheme to categories in a world where these categories are falling apart, there's going to be confusion. So there's no time to go into every single objection and sort of issue we've laid out in our documents to you. Sort of overall, I respectfully request that we have more time to be able to discuss these matters in some private meetings with you, with some of the sponsors of the bill, because I feel that there is somewhere along the way a breakdown of communication. So currently, the proposed legislation, the issues that we object to is, number one, the 50-foot requirement between buskers and any vendor. So the ACLU wrote a letter to you today, and in the letter they said, between the proposed 50-foot buffers and new limits on performing in the plaza, the amended ordinance may create such a web of intersecting restrictions that it all but eliminates possibilities for street performers to occupy the plaza and long stretches of nearby public property. So we have to look at the effects of these things. This legislation, in effect, creates a ban on street performances in the plaza and downtown. The Santa Fe Buskers Alliance has taken to measuring the plaza and found that the 50-foot requirement denies all but the center of the plaza to busking activities, street performance activities, even those that don't have any sound. The effect of this rule is to allow only one busker on the plaza at any given time, including those that lack sound. Additionally, the provision would be invalid because it floats. So what's not considered in this provision is many performances such as acting, pantomime, Our Ladies of Mariachi who are here tonight. These performances float, they move. And because the area of performance may be in constant flux, the buffer zone, this 50-foot buffer zone, is vague and unpredictable and risks burdening speech, more speech than intended. So it's that narrowly tailored question that comes into effect here. The other issue or element of this that we take issue with is the not plainly audible beyond 50 feet. So for us, it's the most concerning element. I know that this is a difficult issue. It's difficult no matter how you cut it. It was initially proposed at 100 feet and reduced by half. However, we have fundamental issues with the subjectively plainly audible standard. This term is not defined anywhere. Even if it were, it has the practical effect of silencing speech throughout virtually the entire community. Plainly audible from 50 feet could be a simple conversation if the wind blows in the right direction. The ACLU has said on this point, street performers will have difficulty ascertaining whether or not their speech violates the law and subjects them to penalties. It's confusing what this means to everyone. Further, it gives public officials and the public discretion over such decisions. This type of discretion has been prohibited by our Supreme Court in Shuttlesworth.
Ma'am, can you run down real quick?
Okay. One more problem with this, the identification issue. Again, there's a less restrictive means, which means making the identification available. The amplification issue is a new issue. Amplified is not synonymous with made louder. This would all but limit certain types of speech, including electronic music, which requires amplification, and synthesizers. So it actually is a restriction, a content restriction on speech. So overall, this vision of the plaza that's painted through this proposed ordinance is one of severely restricted speech. The effect is a dangerous and non-constitutional restriction on speech, and I believe that if this is tabled and we have a little bit more time, along with the other interested parties, to have a sit-down with the sponsors of this bill, we can solve these issues together. And we respectfully request this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Ricky Rodriguez. I'm a break dancer from downtown. I've been dancing there 17 years. I come with a group of kids. It seems like we're put into a bind to have confrontations with everybody else, including the police, because the rule this mathematically does not make sense. If you did 2 hours a day, 12 hours of daylight, you only get 6 people to be down there a day. So you're getting 6 people that's hanging out there all day long. I'm thinking shorter time. If you can't make your money in half an hour or perform and let everybody love what you're doing, if half an hour is not enough, I mean, even my mom don't want to see me break dance for 2 hours, right? And I'm pretty good. But so half an hour would be logical in not getting me in trouble with him or anybody else, just to share a simple kindergarten math problem. There's not enough time in the day for 2 hours. And I know that you guys already have gotten 150 people or so to already pay for it. That's $35 a pop. That's a lot of money invested into the city. I would just like you guys to look at the simple math problem. There's not enough time. We're kind of gaining and starting confrontation with everybody else by putting these rules that they can't be. It's not even logical to use those rules. So if we could shorter time it, let's you guys think.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Mayor, councilors, my name is Curtis Hutchison. I am a busker, I am a composer, I'm an entrepreneur and a businessman. I played piano at the El Dorado Hotel for 17 years. I played venues around the world that are very notable. I've worked with many of the best known musical artists alive and many, unfortunately, who have passed on this planet today. I wanted to present to you another face of buskers, often concerning a number of these issues, and the limited time I've had to, I'm going to have to say a lot less than I intended to. Concerning a lot of these issues, for example, not being able to share your license. Now, when I go out and busk, I've had a number of very well-known artists come to join me. Some who live here and some who just come to visit, some who come for just that opportunity. One example is Santa Fe resident, whose name now eludes me, but had the master class at UCLA for film scoring, and Jerry Freed. Okay, and he brings his reed out, saxophone out, he comes play with me. As a pianist, I have to use a keyboard, I have to use amplification. I want to say also that I moved to Santa Fe in 1980 from Vail, Colorado, where, among other things, I was the founder of the Resorts West Media Group and did global marketing for Vail Mountain and the Vail Resorts Association. I have some experience in what brings tourists to a place, what tourists look for, and what they enjoy. And I can tell you that these restrictions on busking, I don't feel, as far as our visitors are concerned, is a very good idea.
Thank you.
And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The minute goes by really fast. So we try and hold up from starting the clock until you start really getting to your discussion. But I would encourage you to really kind of go to the points that you want the counselors to consider here tonight, and that way we make sure that you're able to get your thoughts on the record. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Philip Gutierrez. I'm a flute player and traveling busker. I came to Santa Fe a year ago. For 1 week, me and my girlfriend made our first $100, and it was like a breath of fresh air because we were just starting out, and now here we are a year later, and we're a lot better. And we're making a little bit more money, and we like it the way it is. I think getting 1 month, permit is nice. To be able to renew it only once a year is good for us. I would not like to see that go away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joana Alvarez Reyes. I'm the leader and member of Mariachi Buenaventura. We're Santa Fe's first Latino mariachi. We play in the plaza every year. People actually call me, when they see me, they know me by the plaza better than they know the actual group's name. Just today, somebody was like, "You're that girl on the plaza." I'm like, "Yeah, Mariachi Buenaventura, yeah, that's right." Okay, well, we're on the plaza all the time. We buy a busker pass every year come springtime because you can't really busk in the wintertime, so it's only good for summertime mostly and maybe a little bit of fall. So we busk, and it comes with a paper with regulations, restrictions, everything. We read it thoroughly. All the girls know it. We we've always followed it. I mean, we've never had a problem with it. I mean, so far it's worked out okay. Like, as far as being a certain amount. If we see other buskers on the plaza, sometimes we'll ask, have you guys already been here for like an hour and a half? If they say, yeah, it's been like an hour. Okay, we'll come back later. We try to work around them. We try to get along with the other buskers. I mean, stuff like that. What else? Yeah, as far as that, I mean, we get along with everybody. I think it's worked out pretty well. If this is kind of what I depend on for my summertime, and that's why I jumped at this opportunity to come, because when I heard about this meeting, I was like, oh my God, is it going to get stopped? Is it going to get changed? As far as that 50 feet thing about you don't want it to be heard 50 feet away or further than 50 feet, in my group, I know for sure, I mean, without this microphone, I could sing the whole room out right now. That's just one person. And then there's about 7, 8 of us sometimes. And then also the other thing I've heard that if, for the group I have a mariachi band, they said all your girls need to be there at any time. Well, if 2 girls get sick or when there's an emergency, one can't come on a certain date, am I not allowed to bring my group still to the plaza to play? I thought that was kind of crazy, because when you define a group as 8 people, can a group be 2 or 3 people? There's trios, there's quartets, whatever. You know what I mean? And we do that as well in mariachi.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I love Mariachi Buenaventura. You guys are amazing.
Yeah.
And again, know that minute goes by really fast.
Good evening, members of the council, mayor. My name is Angel Kukowski. I'm executive director for Make a Difference in New Mexico, and I'm also a busker. I play guitar and I sing Christian music. This amendment is another step towards turning Santa Fe into just another sterile, money-centered old town. What makes Santa Fe unique and what brings people to Santa Fe is its unique, inclusive culture. This amendment will strike that out. Now, I'm going to address the elephant in the room, the homeless people. Many people who are very successful live vicariously through homeless people. I know with my personal experience being homeless, many of the people that have jobs own companies that would talk to me, and their eyes would get lost in the romanticism of traveling across the country. This is an opportunity that is unique in Santa Fe that you can't find anywhere else. Also, busking is not an elite occupation. You can't expect to have Carlos Santana playing in the middle of the plaza. The plaza is meant for musicians that are just starting out, traveling musicians, and people who are learning their craft. As to the regard to the sound ordinance, what about the bandstand? I'm pretty sure you can hear them a block away. Yet I don't think this ordinance, this amendment, seeks to block the bandstand from performing anymore. So under these considerations, I would ask that you reconsider these amendments and reconsider what Santa Fe really is. Is it a commerce center, or is it a center of cultural inclusivity? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, 1 minute. First of all, my name is Ben Bauer. Once again, I'm a lawyer by day. Mr. Chandler, thank you for the suggestion on that amendment. If there is that change, that there is a provision for a warning, and if the police actually do that, I think that's probably acceptable. And we really appreciate the conversations about this issue, the give and take that's happened, taking our phone calls, meeting with us. A couple things, as a lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, I always see when things go wrong. And that's what I try to keep my eye on. Where are things going to break down where we have somebody in court? And specifically, I see it with the type of performance. How are you going to give a license for a particular type of performance? How do you define that? I think it's unnecessary. A unicycle could be covered under something else. That's a particular provision you might strike out this evening, and that would be good for this bill. The displaying of photo ID, you're going to have to create a new kind of photo license for this. It is unnecessary. That is a particular thing you might strike out that would take away things going wrong down the line. Finally, I'm glad that there is now a warning citation provision here. I just need to say you've received a letter from the ACLU. If there are any arrests under this, it would really be tragic. So I would ask that the police officers, I know, want to do a good job on this, that we avoid those kinds of end games. Thank you.
So I just want to make sure, because we still have to hear from the vendors, and you guys have told me that, you have people out there, so let's keep this quick.
I'm not here to make any arguments. I'm here to give thanks to all of you. The sponsors, Lindell and Maestas and Trujillo, they were great at the meeting. I never saw such dedication. During this time, it's been a quick 1 month. It's been a lot of work, but the Buskers Alliance has formed relationships with the vendors and with some of the merchants on the plaza. I'd like to speak, just say, like Craig Allen has been really workable. We've talked a lot. I think there's more to come in the future. Andrea Caldera, she's back there. Craig's from Ortega's, and Andrea is the fajita cart on the plaza. Talking with her, it's been great. We've come to some understandings. And I think before we go ahead and pass this legislation tonight, if we had a little more time, the group is forming, okay? And we've got some relationships going, and we want to continue that and want to make a bill that could be actually a model bill for just entirely United States. And I'm hoping that you will go with that, because we can exist under the bill we have now for a short time.
Thank you.
Stephen Kukowski, made a difference some minutes ago. I walk down the streets every day as I'm coming from work. I'm working at the old St. Vincent Hospital. Usually after the buskers are gone, it seems relatively desolate and peaceable, I guess, but dead. When I walk through on the weekends and there's a joyful noise, and there are hundreds of people just walking through the square. It seems like Santa Fe is alive. I don't know. Make a decision.
Thank you. Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Yes, hi, I'm not a busker, I'm not a vendor, I'm just a citizen. I've been here 30 years, and since this became an issue...
State your name, please.
Ellen.
Ellen?
Yeah, Ellen Gruskis. I just live next door, and I've talked to a lot of my neighbors. I mean, if I may be so bold as to represent the community of people, everyone wants the buskers that I ask. And I've asked people from all different walks of life and status, and we love our city different. Let's keep it that way.
Public hearing is going to continue. Would anyone from the merchants or downtown vendors would like to? Are you going to? Would you like to do it individually, or are you going to ask for some time?
We're giving up our time.
You're giving up your time. Okay.
Yeah. And we'll be quick.
How much time do you think you'll need to address the council on your issues? Do 5 minutes?
1 to 2 minutes.
1 to 2 minutes. All three of you?
Just 1 minute.
Okay. Good. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ben Chavez. I'm a plaza vendor. I just want to thank Zach Chandler, the city attorney, for all the work that he's done with it. I think the proposed ordinance is great. I think it's a great start. I think it's still, there's some issues that probably will have to be addressed later on. But for right now, I encourage the council to go ahead and pass that ordinance. I think it addresses a lot of the issues that vendors are concerned with. And I would just like to say that I appreciate the police being down there. I mean, there's a great feeling on the plaza with how things are going there, and we're just really ecstatic about it. It's a great place to work again, and I just encourage you guys to just pass it. We love it, and like I said, it's a great beginning, and that's all I have to say.
Lee Murphy. Mayor Gonzalez and City Council members, thank you very much for the changes you have made to the Buskers Ordinance. Thank you for hearing our concerns and for considering them. It is good, very good to be an American. I have truly appreciated this process. Thank you, Zach, very much. I don't think any of us can say thank you enough. Truly respect the time that you put into this. And I've learned a lot simply by listening to the things that you have brought forward. Thank you. Two things. We're just very concerned that the police still have the ability or have a better ability to be able to enforce the ordinance. All of this work would be for nothing if they couldn't enforce it. And secondly, it is still a mystery to me that apart from the buskers, everyone else must have a permit specifically for the plaza. Pay a plaza user fee. Two things for our historic plaza. If you are a car club, a bandstand, an event, a vendor, or having a wedding, you must have a permit for the plaza and you must pay a plaza user fee. Buskers are the only people group who do not have to adhere to these rules and standards with regards to the plaza. That is still a mystery to me. And the 200 plus buskers, the permits that were given out, some of them are banned. So that's about 300 people who have had access to the plaza to generate tips and an income. Only about 20 some of them have participated in this process. And I have not heard one of them come up here and honestly say that perhaps that is not right. Not one of them has come up here and said that. That is still a mystery to me. Having said that, though, we are very appreciative of the ordinance and very hopeful that it's going to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
My name is Michael Murphy, Mr. Mayor, City Councilor. We'd really just like to say, I don't know, maybe we should just get rid of all the vendors. Just have buskers on the plaza. See how that goes for a while. I don't know, you know. I don't think it would be a great idea, but we could try that, you know. We've got new council here now that wants to bring new arguments. Maybe some of them are legitimate, and a lot of them are not, because if that council would have been in a lot of our meetings, a lot of that's been discussed. So it's very frustrating, you know, whenever you have people who come in the middle or the end, and now they're trying to drag it out more and more. So, you know, we've spent a lot of time on this, and I'd like for you guys to honor that. You know, a lot of problems with, you know, we want to make sure there's some kind of enforcement. If police are just giving warnings, they've had people tearing up warnings in their face and throwing them on the ground. Is that what we're still going to continue to do? You know, there's a problem. These buskers, most of them are not the problem. The problem are the buskers who aren't here, and that's the point that we've made. And so when you have people who don't want to adhere to the busker rules, and the police can't do anything about it, it frustrates buskers, it frustrates vendors, it frustrates shop owners. So that's why something needs to be done. The reason to specify, for example, a type of license is because we've got a busker on the plaza who has a license for silent poetry. He's selling weeds, drugs. Is that what buskers should do? Be on the plaza selling drugs? You see what I'm saying? You guys aren't even, that's not a busker issue.
Can I ask you to wind down real quick?
Yes, sir.
City Council.
These buskers would say that he's not even a busker, and they're right. And something needs to be done about those things. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Good evening. My name is Valerie Fairchild. I'm with the Santa Fe Downtown Merchants Association. I would like to recommend that you all pass this because it's a step in the right direction, and you're going to review it in 6 months anyway. There are a lot of, both sides or all sides have brought up good points, but I think that if you get this going, it's like Obamacare, just one step at a time. I think there's been some good arguments on all sides, but this is a good step in the right direction. And I want to thank the police department for being on the plaza. Thank you very much. I support it. I see points from different sides, and I think it's a good thing. It's a good step in the right direction. And thanks for all your hard work. Good night.
sitting in the back, who did a lot. Mr. Chandler, who did phenomenally. I'd like to thank everyone. But I'd also like to thank the buskers that are all here, that have come to all the meetings, that have given their input. George, who did so much, and, you know, I feel like I'm getting an Academy Award.
Can you state your name for the record?
You should be a busker.
But I wanted to thank
Hey, ma'am, can you state your name real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry to say that it was slow.
In the microphone, we can hear you.
Yeah, I was trying to keep it on.
That's okay. On the DL.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
So I just wanted to thank everybody that's been involved in this whole thing. And I think the whole thing was to be involved was to bring it a sense of community, not to separate everybody out and bring animosity. I was hoping it was going to bring togetherness, fellowship, and community. And please keep the police department on the plaza, because without them, it's terrible. So please support the police department on the plaza. Keep them there. I'll be here again if they leave. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right, the public hearing session is closed, and we'll go and open up for discussion by the council. Councilman Estes.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve bill number 2014-10 with the following amendment. Restore the language stricken in section 23-8.7A, parts 1 and 2, with the exception of the word written.
Second for discussion. I have a question, Zach. You know, I know that there's some specificity in here, and I wonder how do we regulate that without, you know, stifling, you know, kind of the great music or the great performance that might be happening on the plaza. Because what I worry about is if there's this buffer that exists, we're going to have people that literally 1, 2, 3, and then calling code enforcement and saying you got to get down here. I mean, how do we keep it from becoming an enforcement nightmare and still be able to support and promote, you know, great buskers that are spending time in the plaza?
Mr. Mayor, I think that one could argue that it's problematic as is, with the current 150 feet buffer between street performers. If properly enforced today, there would be a very limited number of street performers. The goal that the city attorney's office and the finance department and the police department we're going to have some educational sessions, and we're going to work on education and training and retraining. And then in 6 months we can come back to you with an assessment of how the parties have worked this out, and maybe there will be a need for modifications. And that's why I look forward to coming back to you with some specific data.
But in the meantime, we're about to go to the highest season, you know, for street performers, and we're about to go to a more strict, highly regulated ordinance. And I understand the point. And what I'm a little bit worried about is, was it the few bad apples that drove this, or do we know, based on other ordinances around the country where there are street performers, we're moving towards a best practice type model that really assures that there's proper regulation, good quality, you know, opportunity to express oneself. So I guess my question more specifically was, did this ordinance come about to get rid of a few of the bad seeds, or did it come about to be able to enhance the experience for not just the buskers, but visitors, merchants, and others?
Mr. Mayor, the genesis of the project came about from complaints that it's too loud. As much as Councilor Demas is an excellent singer, business cannot be conducted. And how can we figure out how to resolve that issue? We looked at ordinances around the country, and that's where we came up with over 30 very good ideas. But the purpose or the advice that I'm giving to the council tonight, these are maybe the most effective tools based on case law and other practices in other cities.
Well, I want to thank the council certainly for their leadership in this area and driving consensus. I do, though, want to pay close attention because I remember as a kid sitting with my grandfather listening to, at the time that I didn't know there were buskers, but there were street performers out there. And I just don't want us to for it to become so regulated that it's difficult for people to go out and practice their craft or enhance the experience for people who are walking through the plaza. So, I think that we just have to err on the side of being flexible and not so much on the side of being, super strict. And I think that that's going to be the difference in how we deal with this and try and regulate it effectively. Councilor Rebecca.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too would like to thank everyone for being here tonight. It's great to hear from everybody, and then especially to the councilors that took the time to meet with everybody. It looks like pretty good work, and I think a good starting point. So just thank you to all of you for taking your time to do that. Zach, on page 4 of I guess it's page 2 of the ordinance, page 4 of the document on line 23F, it says, street performers shall stay at least 50 feet away, and it's scratched out 150. So it's really making the plaza area more inviting to buskers. That's the way I read it. It's giving more opportunity to get more in there. Is that true? Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that's right. The zone between street performers is being shrunk, which in theory will allow a greater number of performers than is the status quo ordinance.
That's what I thought. I wasn't quite sure from hearing some of the comments that I felt like they thought we were trying to push them out when really it's encouraging more to be on there. The second thing was on what you had recommended with regards to 23-8.7. Really number 2, upon a second and subsequent violation by the same person, the police shall issue a citation. What would they be issuing? So they would give basically a verbal warning first and then jump to a citation?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, yes, that would be the progressive discipline. This is an area that we would like to study and come back to about what would be the most effective technique. Should it be decriminalized? Should it just be a licensure penalty? And as you've stated, what you've stated is correct.
If I could hear from one of our police officers there, is this going to make it easier for you to enforce, or is it going to be status quo?
Mayor, councilors, the changes would help us. We worked with the city attorney's office as well. The problem we are running into currently, the ordinance that we currently have right now is not enforceable by us other than to give numerous verbal warnings. And the reason being is it states that we shall issue a written warning on the first violation. We don't have written warnings. We cannot issue a written warning other than a traffic citation. There's no, we would basically have to redesign our non-traffic citations with added cost to the city to add that feature in there when we have used that same book for a long period of time. So we feel that just changing the first part would make it very user-friendly. It would make it more eligible for the current officers, not only the biking team, but as well as our patrol officers, to also understand more what the enforcement is. Instead of leaving it to suggestion is how it was written before, and there was a lot of confusion. So I think that change would definitely help us out and allow us to give verbal warnings. We don't want to go straight to a written citation. We want to make it educational. We want to, keep it, more community policing instead of just bringing them down. That's not what we're doing.
And if you did have to issue a citation, you talked about your book. Is there adequate checkboxes, areas in that citation book to issue a citation for something regarding this ordinance?
Yes, there is. How it normally happens is if I issue a non-traffic citation, I would then also follow that citation with a narrative or a report that I would type about why I wrote that citation.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here tonight, and obviously thank you for your work on the plaza. It looks like it's much appreciated by all, so keep up the great work.
So just a quick question, Zach. I don't know if there was a copy error on my packet, but in the memo it says less than 50 feet from other street performers. It doesn't have anything else, but in the bill it talks about other vendors. So is it other vendors as well?
Just to be precise, where are you looking at, page 2 of the memo?
So if yes, page 2 of the memo. I think it was all my memo says is, but it looks like maybe there was a copy error. It just says, I want to make sure. It says less than 50 feet from other street performers, and that's it. There's a comma after that, and that's it. So I don't know.
Mr. Mayor, if I may approach with the correct copy. I'll return to
Yes, that's fine.
Zach, can you, for the record, clarify the councilor's question?
Yes, for the record, Mr. Mayor, the bill as proposed is 50 feet away from street performers to street performers and street performers to Plaza Park artisan vendors and Plaza push car vendors.
Mr. Shea.
So Zach, you know, I read the minutes from the abbreviated meeting or facilitated meeting. I'm still not quite sure I understand the need to identify exactly the type of performance and also for the photo identification.
Mr. Mayor, the reason for the one-line addition to the current busker license would assist the finance department to cap to, in the front end, if someone is going to perform on a unicycle or with fire, which are currently prohibited in other ordinances, that the finance department and the busker would understand that performance is prohibited and be caught beforehand and not so that the busker could go then to the plaza and then have to run into an enforcement issue. That's the point.
Well, you know, again, I'm trying to track all of what we're doing with the plaza these days, and it's ironic that we're kind of clamping down on this, on street performers, and when we're really trying to open up the plaza, at least that's an effort that's been put out there. So I want them to track. I mean, if the plaza, you know, if the streets are now going to be the expanded plaza, or some streets, I would really like to have this track. I mean, if there's someone that can be on a unicycle and play